that on our little tour so far, I have only said the words World War I once. I didn't tell you anything about it. I just said the words once. But I don't want to gloss over an opportunity to leave you with a little pearl of wisdom. Here it is. Did you know, or can you even imagine, that in World War I there was not one United States designed or built Army combat aircraft flown by the United States Army Air Corps? Not one. Might surprise you. Well, that changed in World War II. And what I'm going to do now is ask you to guess for me. Again, I'm keeping you awake this way. Guess for me, how many airplanes do you think were built, that's of all types together, in the United States during World War II? Tell me.
22,000.
22.
Physical types or just mass?
Massive. Everything. Everything. How many? Oh my. Okay, well guess this. This is not the least bit a guess. This is a fact. 273,000 airplanes were built in the United States during World War II. We built them, we flew them, we crashed them, we fought with them. You know, we used them in combat to fight, we sold them, we gave them away. Everything you can imagine you could do with them, we did in huge numbers. 273,000, a quarter of a million airplanes in that span of time. You build it? Your sister? Good for you. All right, well I hope I've flown something you did. All right, yes, now that's impressive. Anyway, this is one of the kinds that I'm talking about. In fact, this is one of our better fighter planes, the World War II, and we resist the opportunity and maybe the temptation to name anything as the best. It's so hard when you call something the best because you have to tell every single caveat about when it was the best, how it was the best, why not this but that, when the sun's here and not here, whether it's day, night, weather, this or that. See, you can't do that. So this is one of our better fighter planes of World War II. And it's very revolutionary. Look how different it is from anything you've seen so far. It has a nose wheel. That's interesting. Any of you have had a ride in a little tail dragger airplane at your local airport know that it's really hard to see out for taxi and the initial part of your takeoff and your final landing roll. It's even hard to steer because you can't hardly see what you're doing, see? All right, that's fixed with this idea. But the airplane itself is revolutionary in its shape. If you look down from above, the plane looks kind of like a giant letter H with a long crossbar, the wings. See? From the tip of the propeller all the way back to the end of the tail, it has these two long booms, and the tail plane is connected between those two booms. So it's very revolutionary shape. But you're probably nagging with the idea of how come it has two motors? Well, anyway. When they put out a request for proposals to our industry in 1938 here in the United States, the various airplane manufacturers came back with plans, offerings for this competition, and they all had a problem. In fact, they all had the same problem. And here's what it was. There was not one engine in the free world that was developed enough to be used and would be adequate to do this mission. Not one. So if one engine isn't good enough, what about two? So here we go with two powerful engines. Let's stop
The guided tour will begin in approximately 5 minutes, starting from the tour desk located at the rear of SR-71 Blackbird. Thank you.
Okay, so here we have two American-made, made by the Allison Corporation, liquid-cooled reciprocating engines, and they're 1,425 horsepower each, with a combat power level that they can hold for a short time on each flight of up to 1,600 horsepower. It gives me great pleasure to tell you this is a 400-mile-an-hour airplane. It's not even 1940 yet, and it's a 400-mile-an-hour airplane. Wow! How did they do that? I mean, you don't just add another 100 miles an hour. What did they do? Well, they did something profound, and I'll bet some of you know about this, but here goes. Maybe you know that when you take off and climb up to altitude, the atmospheric pressure drops off really fast and really far, right? So does the density of the air fall off very fast and very far, all right? Well, those are the lifeblood of a reciprocating engine, in fact, any kind of air-breathing engine. And what goes down is the horsepower. Just goes down. So we had some pretty smart engineers in the country in the late 30s who realized there may be a way to keep from losing that horsepower that you had for takeoff as you go up to your combat altitude. The idea occurred to them that, can you imagine the violence that's coming out of the tailpipe, the exhaust pipe of a 1425 horsepower engine at full power at sea level? That's high temperature, high pressure, high mass flow, just roaring out of there. And what's it being used for? Nothing. Just heating the earth, heating the world, see? So they thought, wouldn't it be interesting if we took a little turbine, like a pinwheel almost, you see, put it in that powerful high-speed exhaust stream, extracted out some of that mechanical energy, connected it directly to a pump of some type, and pumped those cylinders up like there's no tomorrow. We could double the power for takeoff, and here's the magic, and keep it all the way up to the combat altitude of 25,000 feet. A miracle. 400 miles an hour. What have I just talked about? A turbo supercharger. Isn't it funny? Especially you young people will get a kick out of this, I think. In this day and age, we have turbo tax, turbo toothpaste, turbo tennis shoes, and nobody knows what turbo means. Well, I'll tell you what, those airplane designers in 1938 knew what turbo means. And they really made a difference by making a thing called a turbo supercharger. And if you don't think that's important, ask some race driver nowadays, okay? Yeah, they use them too. Okay, the plane was used in Europe, it was used in North Africa, but it was like a marriage made in heaven when this aircraft was sent to the Pacific. In the Pacific, it was actually able to show all of its great skills, so to speak. That's just what we needed when we got to the Pacific, was the things this thing did well. So anyway, how well did we do? We have some very good authority that 38 was responsible for about 1,500 Japanese aircraft lost during World War II. And you may think that's a big number until I tell you this. Look up. Just for a minute. Okay, you see it. Look down. That airplane is a Grumman F-6F Hellcat flown by the U.S. Navy off of aircraft carriers. Well, let me tell you what, it owned the Pacific. That type of aircraft, built in Long Island, New York, was responsible for 5,000 Japanese aircraft loss. So between the two of these, they kind of owned the Pacific, didn't they? Yes, it did. About this airplane, it's interesting to know that these planes were built at an enormously high production rate. During the peak of their production there in Long Island, New York, they were putting those out at 640 a month. Can you imagine? 640 a month. It's a lot. Okay, well, I'll stop by telling you then that how important this plane was to the overall outcome in this way. You know what an ace is? A person who has 5 or more combat kills of an enemy aircraft, all right? Well, our two leading aces in all of World War II were called Richard Bong and Tom McGuire. And Richard Bong had 40 kills and Tom McGuire 38, and they were all accomplished in the P-38. Okay?
Is it a aircraft carrier?
Not in the least. No, never. This was a land-based airplane, usually flown off of muddy little unprepared strips in the rainy Pacific Islands, and you know. And you might say, "Gosh, it really looks beat up." Has that occurred to anybody? Yes. Okay. Well, listen. You've got 2 choices, or more. You actually have about 5 choices. When we get a prized possession, like one of these planes, we have a formal professional staff who conducts negotiations about what will we do to it. Now, your choices go all the way from doing nothing to it to preserving it in the way it looks when you got it for generations to come, or to do a complete restoration, like in the case of the Hopper Hurricane. See, it's perfect. It's made to day one condition. Well, this one isn't. This plane looks like it did when it was taken off of some island in the Western Pacific in 1945, but it's really not the same. Here's why. It is covered extensively in preserving compounds so that over time the paint won't change, nothing will change. It won't corrode, it won't change color, it won't crack and break and fall paint on the ground type of thing. See, we're saving this for your grandchildren's grandchildren to be just exactly like it was in 1945. So that's one of our choices. See? Okay, let's go around the corner. You have a question?
There's about 20 of these buried in the ice on Greenland.
Yeah, and one of them isn't there anymore, called Glacier Girl, which is flying.